So what's going on, everybody? So today's guest quit his 9 to 5 in just 3 months, and he made his first $1 million through Airbnb by the age of 25. And he was also able to retire his wife from her banking job. Today we're talking to Wasim, who scaled from 1 unit to 17 in just 4 months, and now manages a portfolio of 53 properties, which is a combination of rental arbitrage and co-hosting units. He also launched his company STR Locator, where he helps clients find profitable pre-negotiated deals. And so far, he's helped over 700 clients lock in cash flowing properties, and he's servicing over 20 countries with arbitrage opportunities. And today, we're going to be breaking down exactly how he did it and how you can follow the same path. So let's
Oh,
get into it, man. And again, thank you for your time.
appreciate it, man. Thank you, Alberto, for having me, man. It's a pleasure. And yeah, looking forward for this call.
Yeah, man. So what I want to know first is like before you even got into the business, Airbnb, any of that, like what were you doing before?
Yeah. My background, man, I did the whole college graduation thing. I went to college. I was a double major, majored in business administration and accounting, and then came out and I knew right away that I didn't want to do the 9 to 5. I saw how hard my mom worked. I had immigrant parents that came to America. So I was like, man, I have to do something different. So I immediately took on a financial advisor position, which is more like starting your own business or starting your own practice. And it was so good because it allowed me to really understand money, understood that money was a tool. I was working with so many different clients and I saw that majority of their portfolios was in real estate. So I continue seeing real estate, real estate, real estate. I started to see that instead of working for money, we needed to have money be a tool. So then it allowed me to start venturing into different business ventures. So I got into, I think my first business was the e-com business. I started doing like Amazon and drop shipping and eBay, like started like buying and selling. That's how I started. And then I pretty much went into every venture. I went to the network marketing business where I really got to learn about being a business owner and marketing and sales and building teams and having the right skill sets. Had some success there. And then I finally got into the car rental business, the Turo business. That's where I had my first six-figure business.
Mm.
And that was really good. I was like, man, this is awesome. And then during that car rental business, I had a lot of my customers that would come to me and they would be like, hey, do you have any hotels or Airbnbs you would recommend? And for me, I was just like, I kept saying no. And I always was a commit then aim type of guy. So I was like, dude, I want to have that resource. So that struck a nerve. I was like, dude, Airbnb, I've always heard about it. I've always wanted to get into it. So then I started going on YouTube and I just searched Airbnb arbitrage. And that's where I saw Sean's videos. And Sean was in Dallas. So that resonated a whole lot for me. And I literally watched all of Sean's videos. Like I was watching it every single day. This whole philosophy of, making money in real estate without owning property was amazing because I was like, man, real estate was always good for me, but putting 20% down, 15% down, I didn't have that. I was like, dude, I got to save up a lot of money. And at the time I was a broke entrepreneur. I was like, money in, money out, money in. So this arbitrage method struck a nerve for me. And seeing Sean's success was like, okay, he had a sales background just like myself, and he's in Dallas. So I was like, man, if he can do it, maybe I could potentially do it. And then that's what led me into the Airbnb game. So I ventured into every business, man. I did the advising to e-com to Turo to network marketing. I did a little bit of door-to-door sales. Like I did everything. And then Airbnb was where I really had the big success.
Nice. That's awesome. And I'm curious also,
Yeah.
'cause you mentioned that you have immigrant parents and like you graduated and everything. Like, were they always supportive of your like when you said, I don't want to do that, I want to switch over to like
Mm.
entrepreneurship?
Man, that's such a big question. Honestly, they weren't supportive at all. Like my mom was a CFO for a small business. She was an accounting lady. She was big on like go to work, get a job, work for somebody else. So they hated the fact that I was wanting to do entrepreneurship. It was so uncomfortable for them. But at the end of the day, I was like, man, if I want to be able to get the stuff that I want in life, I got to look at the people that have what I have, and have what I want. So my parents didn't have what I wanted. I was like, man, if I just continue down their path, I'm gonna be just like them at their age. So I was like, man, I
What
have to
did you
try
want?
something new. I wanted, for me, I saw how hard my parents worked. I was just like, I want the financial freedom. I want to be able to give back to my parents. I want to be able to retire them. I want to be able to, not be the kid that's always working day in and day out. Like I was like my upbringing too when I was growing up. Um, I was the last kid that used to be picked up at school. Like I think we had that aftercare school. I would always be the last one picked up, and it was because my mom worked. And I was just like, man, like, why am I the only one? So I was like, man, when I grow up, I definitely want to be the one that can spend time with my kids, be there for everybody, give that freedom. So I think that's where that gave me that ambitious mindset growing up, was just my upbringing. And then, I just knew that I had to find a different way. I knew what the 9 to 5 was, and it was great. My parents were the product of it. They did well for themselves over a period of time. But I was like, I have to do something new. If I do what they're doing, I'm gonna be just like them. If I try something else, I'm young, I'm staying at home, I have so many risks I could take now. So that's allowed me to just go high risk and just try anything. So that's what made me want to look at entrepreneurship.
Nice. And it sounded like it took a couple businesses for you to finally hit like your first successful one, right? Like Turo. So
Oh man,
during that time, was there ever any time where you were like, man, maybe I should go the accounting route or something like that?
100%, 100%, man. So my first year as an advisor, I tell everyone this. I was working 60 hours a week. And my first year, I think I made about 7,000 in commissions, 60 hours a week, and stayed at home, luckily. I had my no rent payment, but I was working my butt off. I just graduated college. I'm thinking that, I'm looking at all my friends around me, they're making 70K, 80K, 100K a year. I was like, what am I doing? And there was a point in time where I was literally looking on Indeed and I was trying to go find another salary because I was like, dude, this is not going to work, bro. I keep getting, and with sales, it's like it's a eat what you kill. So if you're not getting clients, you're not getting paid. So
Hmm.
I didn't really realize what was being worked on the back end. So I did start to look at other opportunities, but luckily I didn't take those on. I just stayed consistent and stayed down. But there was definitely multiple times where I would look over and just be like, man, I wish maybe the 9 to 5 is for me. Maybe I should start going on there. This entrepreneurship is just way too tough. Like 6, 7,000 for a year, man. Luckily I didn't have my own place, but man, that was a tough time. But I'm so glad that I just stayed consistent and just kept doing what I was doing.
And you mentioned finally, like when you hit first it was Turo, right? First six-figure business, and then Airbnb made your first million, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So why do you think that? So you were trying hard on these other businesses. Like, why do you think it finally like took off with Airbnb? Like, is it just the business model? What happened differently there?
Yeah, I think it's the business model. I love it because for me, I got to about 15 cars on Turo. So we were doing good, but the biggest problem that I saw was I didn't know how to take myself out the business. Like we were making 6 figures a year, but I was working like I had a job. Like it just felt like I had another job because I could not take myself out and have the business run. And then it wasn't until I got my first property with Airbnb and I saw that, man, like you know, I don't need to be there in order to make money from this property. Like with the car stuff, it was a little bit different. I had to like give the keys to them, and it was hard to find an employee that I could trust that could deliver cars and give keys to other people. But with Airbnb, I'm like, well, you can't steal a house, you can't steal an apartment, you can steal a car. So that was always a scary thing for me. I was like, what if they steal it? With
Right.
Airbnbs, you know where the address is, you know where they're at. You can put ring cameras, you can hire cleaners, you can hire VAs. There's so much more technology. I was like, this is great. So literally, when I had my first property, I was like, man, this is so hands off for me. So I think the business model was the big thing. It allowed me to really scale really fast because I was like, dude, you just need a good cleaning team, good maintenance guys, good virtual assistants, and the more I scale, the less bearing it was for me. It was really weird because with Turo, when you start with one property, it's not as bad as a work ethic. But then you have 5, 10, 15. You're like, oh my goodness, I'm all over the place.
Mhm.
Airbnb is actually different. It's like I think with 1 or 2 units, it's actually a little bit more harder because you don't have a good cleaning team. You're paying premium and pricing. I remember when I was doing the Airbnb stuff, I was cleaning myself because I just was trying to keep every single penny. But then as I scaled, I was needed less inside the business, and I just love that. So one big thing I know about business is that you need to, instead of work inside your business, you need to learn how to work on your business. And I think with Airbnb has a brilliant business model where you can really get into that. So I do think it's the business model. I've seen a lot of others and real estate and the systems that B&B can provide. I think that's why I had success so early.
Mm. And that's something I heard you mention earlier too. Like one of the reasons why you got into it is because with like traditional real estate, you have to put like a lot of money down. And
Yeah,
for somebody just starting off, that's not really possible.
correct.
So tell me a little bit more about how that works with what you do, like rental arbitrage. Like how much money do you have to put down in comparison to that to get it?
Yeah. So man, my first property, it was tough. And it goes back to that question you asked where like, was my parents supportive? I remember it's like it was yesterday, man. I literally had a massive argument with my mom and dad, and
Mm,
we had 15 cars. It's so crazy when you have immigrant parents. It's weird. Like I scaled this business model. I showed them the car rental space. This was like their first experience in entrepreneurship. Got to about 15 cars. Then it ended up being a completely different dynamic. They started treating me like an employee. That's why I'm not a big fan of family in business. I think it can
mm,
hurt relationships. I learned the hard way. And then I literally was like, all right, you know what? You guys are treating me like not the best, and I want to scale this, but you won't allow me to do so, and you only want to go at your pace. So you know what? I'm gonna just give you the business. So I literally gave them the car rental business because I just could not handle the back and forth and the demeanor and the dynamic that they had towards me, and it was not the same when we started. So I literally was like, you know what? You do this. I am going to do this Airbnb style. So I just dropped the car rental business to them. I was like, take it, whatever, and I just went to the Airbnb business. I moved out my house. I went and got my own apartment. I was like, I can't be at the house. I needed a better environment. And it was one of the best decisions of my life. I literally got into it, moved out abruptly, by the way. This was not like, all right, like in 12 months, I'm going to move out. It was like massive fight, like where I was like, we were just really going back and forth. And I was like, man, I have to make a move. So I literally just went and did the Airbnb stuff. And I was like, man, this has to work. And I had this big battery on my back. I was like, I have to prove my parents wrong because they think that this Airbnb stuff is not going to work. They're like, you're just going to get into debt, all this stuff, right? And I was trying to tell my mom, I was like, Mom, you have great credit. At the time, I didn't have good credit. I was like,
mm,
dude, help me with this. We can get the first deal. We can pay off a lot of your debts. She didn't believe in it. She didn't look at it at all. So moved out, had my own apartment, and then got into the Airbnb space for my first property. Dude, took all my money out of my account, like my savings account. I was working Uber Eats, bro. Uber Eats to pay my rent. So that's why like I was doing Uber Eats, listening to all of Sean's videos, and and then trying to do this Airbnb thing. And then luckily I had about like 4,000 saved up. I started off with a small one-bedroom apartment. My rent was $1,300 downtown Dallas. And I was like, man, I'm going to just take a stab at it, right? I didn't run numbers. I didn't look at anything. This was back in 2022. I just was like, man, this is in downtown Dallas, 5 minutes away. I think people would stay here. Like I would stay here, So that's what I did.
mm,
And then I, dude, I got it out the mud, man. I went on OfferUp. I took out the U-Haul truck. I literally set like 6, 7 destinations, and I would pull up with the U-Haul, take used furniture. Like I was like trying to cut corners. I was balling on a budget, but luckily I did everything I could and finally got that first listing up. Kid you not, like got it up. It was so overwhelming and stressful. I probably had like $500 left after I got it furnished. So I literally
That,
was like, bro, this doesn't work, it's over. I'm gonna have to go back home and be like, Mom, you're right. I'm gonna have to go
mm,
move back. It was high stress, high pressure, very lonely moment for me at that time. 2 days later, bro, check my calendar, 4 bookings right out the gate. I had a 3 week booking, I had a 1 week booking, and I kid you not, with just those 3 bookings, my rent was paid and I was already in profit for like $700. And I
mm.
was like, oh my goodness. And that took everything. And that was a small 3, 4K investment, So you can get started. I think I even rented the furniture on some of the items. I went to like Aaron's and I went to these third-party furniture stores and I financed with high interest just to get the deal up. I was like, let me just get it up, you know? And so I did it, man. 3, 4K, got into the one bed, set it up, had an amazing month my first month. I think my rent was 1,300. I was doing the cleanings, bro. That's how broke I was. I was doing the cleanings myself. I was like, bro, that extra 50, $80, give that to me. Like that's a whole day of me doing Uber, you know? And then literally after that, I think my first month in revenue, I think we generated 4,800 in revenue. Our rent was 1,300. Then utilities was like $100. I was managing myself. So I netted about 3,400 in profit.
Mm.
And that was it, bro. After I saw that, I was like, all right, bro, this is the space. That was the most amount of money I've ever made. And that was only one property. I was doing Turo, bro, and that would take me like 6, 7 cars to get to that profit margin. And it took a lot of work for me to get to that. So to me, to make that kind of money in that short period of time, I was like, all right, this is it. I'm gonna study this and off I go.
Dang. And what was like I guess the recipe for you being able to quit your job? Like, did you have to get more units or
I did, I did.
how that look like?
So that was the big thing. I got that first unit. I could have taken the 3,400 and go spent it, right? But I took that money and when I got a second unit. And then I took that second unit when I got a third unit. And I literally scaled that model. I just reinvested back in the business. So I do think when you're getting momentum, you should just take the money and reinvest. Have a good cushion set aside as a worst case scenario. But I just was big on scaling. So I think after 3 months, I quit the Uber Eats stuff. I quit my financial advising stuff because I was like, dude, I'm gonna just go all in on this. And then that's when I got to that 17 apartments. And I think we were bringing in about I think it was about like 52,000 in revenue. I was probably netting 33, 34K in profit in my third month and then just scaled that. That's when the co-hosting really took off and I had some other bigger units and that's how we kind of just built that momentum to get to that $1 million mark for me.
Hmm. And then you even scaled more, 1 to 17 units in 4 months. So I'm really curious because from what I hear and everything you've told me about yourself, like you're really one of your really something you're really skilled at is like negotiating these deals now, right?
Mm,
So
correct.
I'm curious, like, what is your exact system for acquiring a new unit? Like, could you walk us through like how you find the leads, to pitching the landlords, to locking in the deal? Just step by step.
Yeah. Are you talking about where I am right now and how I do due diligence now or when I was in 2022 and how I was getting deals back then?
Well, I'd say let's talk about how you would do it now, right? Because imagine now you would
Yeah,
avoid
it's
a
a
lot of
lot
mistakes you
better.
did in the beginning, right?
Correct, correct. When I first started, I just messaged everybody you can know. I was on Zillow, I was on Facebook Marketplace, I was DMing everybody, and it was so tough to find, but it was a volume game at the end of the day. So I think whether when I got started at the beginning and whether I do it now, volume is number one. Okay, so even when I want to negotiate deals, I can beat the next guy all day because you're only reaching out to 20 people. I'm reaching out to 200.
Hmm.
So that's the rule number one. If you want to find good deals, massive outreach is the most important thing. Whether that's Facebook, whether that's Zillow, whether that's realtor.com, whatever that looks like. So that's what I do first is if I'm wanting a deal or property, I'm doing massive outreach in that market. I'm finding my criteria, and that's what I'm looking for first. So I think
Is
massive
there is
outreach
there
is number one.
sorry to interrupt, but is there one that you recommend somebody watching this video right now, like which one should they pick, do you think? Like, do you have a preferred one to do massive outreach on?
I like Zillow, but I know Zillow caps you to an extent. I think Facebook Marketplace is a golden nugget because there's a lot of landlords on there that have like their Facebook profile, and sometimes I see a lot of owners on there. So I think Facebook Marketplace is a gem. Zillow is always great, but I do think you're going to get capped out to a certain extent. And then if I'm not getting good traction there, then I would probably pivot to like Realtor.com or I think there's Trulia, I think there's Redfin. So I'll look
Mhm.
at those three alternatives. Hot Pads is another one, but my favorite two would be Facebook Marketplace and Zillow, 100%.
Got it. And when they're looking for these people, should it be like a single family home owned thing or like an apartment complex? Like, what do you recommend they shoot for first?
I my best piece of advice is if you're getting into a new space, I always think go slow to go fast is the best way to go because you can always go bigger property. If you start off with a 5 bed and it doesn't go well, it's hard to downsize that and it's a big loss. But if you start off with a nice studio apartment or a 1 bed apartment, the risk tolerance is a lot better. Get that proof of concept, and then you can take the training wheels off and go to a 2 bed or a 3 bed. So anyone that's new, that's starting off, my best recommendation, start off with a smaller property, get that proof of concept, get those jitters out. If you're new to being a business owner, I would definitely recommend that. I think it only makes a difference if you have really, really good financial backing. I think your financial situation dictates what size property you should get. So if you only have
Mm,
5K to your name, probably should stick with a studio or one bed. If you got 100,000 to back you up and you got investors or maybe you have business credit to back you up, I think you could take a little bit higher of a risk, but I still think start small and then build off of that. You can always go bigger. You can't go big and then go small. And then now, if your first one doesn't go well, you have this bad taste in your mouth about Airbnb. And now you're discouraged. Now you're stressed out. Now you're overwhelmed. So I think start slow, feel good about it, get that proof of concept, and then you can always go to the bigger homes after.
awesome. Got it.
Yes, sir. Hopefully that answered well.
Yeah, that's good.
Beautiful.
So you said first step, reach out to them. So we established like where to reach out to them. So how do you reach out to them? Like when you say reach out to them, what do you mean by that exactly?
I think so. When it comes to negotiating with landlords, at the end of the day, it's sales, right? That's what it is. That's why people don't like doing it. And in my opinion, I think it's the number one problem for arbitrage. Like people want to get into the game, but the amount of people that I saw that took coaching programs and wasn't able to get their first deal. And I was like, man, you've been in here for 6 months. You've been a part of this program for 12 months and you still have not gotten a property. Some of these guys are spending $10,000, $15,000 on these programs with no money left and they can't find a deal. So it starts with sales. You got to understand that you're negotiating, you're problem solving, and you have to understand the pain points of the landlord. So in my opinion, I think phone calls are always better. Usually what I would do is I would probably send outreach first, send a message. And if it's a really good deal, I'll call them and pitch them because I can handle their objections in real time over the phone. Versus when you text somebody or you email somebody, you're allowing them to think, right? If you
Mhm.
send me an email, you send me a message. I mean, I could look at it for 8 hours. I could talk to a couple of friends of mine. I could talk to my partners, and then I could get back to you. But if you call me on the spot and I'm like at the gym or I'm like at lunch, you may get me just because you're asking me the right questions or you understand my pain points as a landlord. And even though if I wasn't okay with the business model, you may be the guy that makes me say yes. So I do think calling is always better. If you're scared to do calls, do messages, but do a lot of them. And it's just a numbers game. I think we did a survey with all of the property locators that we have on our team, and we saw that every 13 landlords that you reach out to, one of them will say yes. And I think we had
Mhm.
over 2,000 data breaches that we were looking at to make that data off. So that's the stats, right? So every 100 owners you chat with, maybe 8 or 9 will say yes. So a lot of people will reach out to 10 people and be like, bro, everyone said no, this doesn't work. I'm like, bro, you just haven't put the work in. You need to reach out to 100 before you can even make a judgment. And even when you reach out to 100, you're only getting 8 or 10. So phone calls are best for the best deals. If you're going to do messages, I think you have to go massive outreach and then you can potentially call them after, is what I would say.
Mhm. And I know
Cool.
a lot of people out there, like you just mentioned, that they join pro, they don't take action. And I think a risk is to make that first call to try and pitch them, because they've never done it before. So I don't know if you ever experienced that when you were first starting in sales, or like if you have any advice for people that they're just kind of nervous, they're really in their head about it. Like how could somebody get past that, do you think?
Good question. Good question. This is what I would say. 3 words. Action alleviates anxiety. Okay. With anything that you do, you're going to suck at it. For example, if I went to the gym or if anybody went to the gym, the first time you go to the gym, you're not going to be good at the gym, right? You're going to be super sore. You're going to not know what you're doing. But imagine how good you end up being at the gym 1 year in, 2 years in, 3 years in. You eventually end up being so good at it that you enjoy going to the gym now. But that first time you went, you're dreading it. You're sore. You're like, bro, I don't want to go anymore. What am I doing? That's the same thing with cold calling. That's the same thing with cold messaging. Is you're going to suck. So you have to just tell yourself, dude, I'm not going to be good at this. You're brand new, right? Like just like with anything, public speaking. You can't go up on stage for your first time and expect to speak like Tony Robbins. right? So it's all
Hmm.
in the reps. And I think my best piece of advice is like, dude, embrace the suck. Number one, if you feel anxious, take action, right? Whenever I was like, man, I'm getting no's and this sucks, I would just take massive action. When I'm dialing and I hear no, I end the call, I call the next person right away. I'm not ending the call, sitting there and dwelling on it. Why did he say no? Really feeling all that pain of that rejection. I don't even let it get to me. I'm just calling and I'm dialing. And it's easier said than done for sure. But the more you do it, the easier it gets and the better you get. And when I started first time, dude, my first arbitrage, when I met the guy in person, dude, I was turning red. I was sweating like in front of him, bro. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just did terrible. I fell on my face. So I think you have to embrace that. You got to fall forward, but you got to get right back up. And the more you fall forward, you're like, bro, that doesn't hurt anymore. Like you said no to me, but so did 20, 30 other guys, and I'm still here. Like nothing happens to you. A lot of people feel like when somebody says no to you, like, you feel attacked or, you're about to die or something. I'm like, bro, no. If you get like the goal this is what I said. I said the goal with arbitrage negotiation is not for them to say yes, not for them to say no, but for them to come to a decision. That's the most important thing. Like whether they want to say yes or
Hmm.
no, you want to get them to come to a decision as soon as possible because that can give you insight if you should move forward to the next person. Some people that do arbitrage negotiating, they'll be like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna just ask, I'm gonna rent it. I'm not gonna bring up corporate leasing or arbitrage, and then I'm gonna show up in person, and then I'm gonna like bring it up last minute. And I'm like, dude, you just wasted all this time. You drove 30 minutes. You met up with the landlord. You brought him coffee. You beat around the bush. You finally got him in person. And then now you're like, hey, by the way, I actually want to do this. Now he's blindsided. He's like, dude, why didn't you just
Hmm.
led with this? You wasted my time. He's looking at you in a completely different manner and you just lost the deal. Versus, you might as well just get right to the point. But like, look, man, this is what I'm going to do with your property. Is this something you're open to? And if you're not, I would love to talk about it. I would love to hear your concerns and maybe we can find a compromise. And then if he says no, cool, then you can move forward and go to the next guy. But I've seen a lot of people that would be like, man, I'm gonna just not talk about it and beat around the bush and then go to them in person and then like bring it up. And I've just seen mixed controversial reviews there where landlords, you're wasting their time because they want a real tenant and you should have led with that versus you trying not to bring that up. So I do think, if you embrace the suck, you take massive action, you just keep putting the reps in, you will be very good at this over time. But a lot of people have the expectation that I'm gonna just be great day one. And you don't have that expectation for anything else you do. So why are you having that expectation with this? So keep that same energy across the board, put it in the work, and you will get yeses that come about as you go.
Hmm. Great advice. I love it. And
Yes,
something
sir.
you mentioned earlier right now was like, yeah, a lot of people also just go about doing it the wrong way, like you mentioned. Like maybe they'll pitch it in a way that will make the landlord feel like, oh, you just wasted my time, which is like the worst thing you can make someone feel, right? So what would you say is
Yep.
the correct way to go about that? Like, yeah, just give me a little
Yeah.
step by step on that.
This is my formula. So I think there's a couple of trigger words that I don't like using when I'm chatting with the landlord. You kind of have to treat it like dating, especially when it comes to sales, right? When you meet a significant other and you're interested in working with them, you can't just be like, "Hey, man, let's cut to the chase. I want to marry you," right? Like you're gonna
Right.
scare them off, right? You're like, oh, "What up, man?" So I think you gotta wine and dine. You gotta peel the onion layer by layer. So what I do is I start to ask questions about the property first. I don't go straight to corporate leasing. You can't just call the landlord and be like, "Hey, man, can I Airbnb your property?" It's like, dude, you didn't even ask if it was available. You didn't even ask, like, if I'm the landlord, right? Sometimes you're pitching the wrong guy. So I think number one, first get the decision maker on the call. So usually I try to ask, who are you? Are you the agent? Are you the manager? Are you the homeowner? Every
Mm.
pitch is different versus who I'm chatting with. That's usually the first question I'm asking, so I can frame you the right way. After I understand who you are, now I'm trying to understand what are your pain points as a realtor? What are your pain points as a management person? What are your pain points as a landlord? And how can I fulfill that? So then I'm asking questions about the property. I go through something called a yes ladder. So I'm just asking you, like, hey, man, is this property on XYZ street? Yes, it is. Is this property available? Yes, it is. I see that you're wanting like 2,000 in rent. Is that correct? Yes, it is. Okay, is it furnished or unfurnished? I'm getting all this information, right? Once I get all of that info and I see a lot of the stuff that's there makes sense, like I'll even ask if there's an HOA. If there's an HOA,
Mhm.
then I'm like, oh, this might not be a good opportunity for me because even if he says yes, the HOA says no, I'm gonna have long-term issues. So I'm getting all those questions, and that's also softening him up. I'm asking where he's based out of. I'm asking, is this the only property you own? So it's that bonding and rapport that's necessary at the beginning. Once you
Mhm.
build that rapport, then you hit him with the magic question. And the magic question is not, can I do Airbnb? Can I sublease your property? The magic question is, are you open to a corporate lease?
Mhm.
Boom. And just be silent when you ask him that. Now, two things will happen after that. Number one, he may know what that is already. And be like, all right, corporate lease. Do you mean Airbnb? Do you mean you're renting to employees? Right? He may have a definition about that and may provide that for you. More than often, you're going to have landlords that have no idea what that is. So then there's this education side of it. Corporate lease, what do you mean? What is that? Boom. So then you need to know what the hell a corporate lease is. So how I define a corporate lease to a business to a landlord is like, hey man, a corporate lease is just like a personal lease. The only difference is instead of me living there, I'll be operating a business. Does that make sense? So I'm literally educating the landlord on what each term makes. He's like, okay, that makes sense. What's your business? So then the next question comes up. And I would go more into the corporate housing matter than the vacation rental matter, in my opinion. If you want to get more yeses, taking the corporate housing angle is a better approach than vacation rental. Because if I go to a landlord, I'm like, hey, I want to do vacation rentals. I want to do Airbnb at your home. It can kind of scare them sometimes because they're just like, oh, party goers, lots of people, loud noises, complaints. It's they're not there yet, you know. So I don't brace them just yet. So then what I would say is like, hey, I do corporate housing, and corporate housing doesn't sound as bad as vacation rentals. So he's like, oh, corporate housing, what is that? So then I'm like, hey man, we house clients in the area. Your property is perfect for them. And we cater to travel nurses, doctors, lawyers, remote workers, insurance relocation clientele, even interns nearby in the area. This is our ideal market, and they come here for midterm and short-term stays, and that is our ideal client, and your property is perfect for them. Boom. So that's my definition of what we do. Now, after that, see if they're going to say yes to that. If they say no to that, very, very, very low chance that they'll say yes to Airbnb. If you're not going to be okay with travel nurses staying there, why would you be okay with random people on Airbnb staying there for 2 nights? Like
Mhm.
it doesn't make sense. So I try to get him to say yes to the corporate housing. Now, once he gets yes to the corporate housing, then I can ease him into the Airbnb conversation. So then I'll be like, look, man, to be frank and to build this relationship and start on the right way, the way we market to our clientele, we use multiple platforms. So I don't always say we only use Airbnb. I say, hey, we have our direct booking website, we have VRBO, we have the travel nurses. But I do want to be honest with you, we do use Airbnb to get our clientele. But if we do use Airbnb, we have a very strict screening process. We want to make sure the client that's coming in fits with our needs, is the ideal client for us, and then they will be able to stay at our property. Just wanted to let you know that if that's okay with you. And that's me kind of bracing him into the Airbnb conversation. But you saw
Mhm.
all of that bonding rapport, corporate housing, education, boom. Then I brace Airbnb. That's how you kind of ease that conversation in. I think a lot of people get right to the point too quick. I think a lot of people use the terms like Airbnb and subleasing, which are bad terminology. And that gives them like nervous and anxiety because they see the news and they see all these bad things that can look online about Airbnb and they may not be the most comfortable, but I kind of just made them feel more and more comfortable in the conversation because I got them to say yes to corporate leasing. I got them to say yes to corporate housing. And then I eased the conversation into Airbnb, but I let them know that it's just one of our platforms and we have a strict screening process. Makes sense? And then usually by then, I've built so much rapport. I'm high energy. I'm excited. I'm wanting to help them. I want a long term relationship. They're like, okay, that works. You seem like a good guy. And that's usually how we get the yeses on the deal. So I know that was a whole lot, but that's literally start to finish of how I do it. And I do that in volume. And that's why we convert so much, is because we're not afraid to get on the phone and take that extra minute or two to build that bonding and rapport than just cutting to the chase and just getting no. I think there is that rapport that's necessary, especially when you want to go after those good hot deals, which in your point is the hardest part about this space is finding a good deal. Everyone can be a good host, but where are the opportunities? That's where we can make the money. So that's my 2 cents on that.
That was great. I hope everybody watching this like take notes on that because that was he
Yeah,
just literally gave you like all the secrets right there. So that was
facts.
thank you for that.
Of course, man. I'm gonna give it out, man, because you know what I say is like, even when you give out all the information, probably 1% of people watching this will actually go take action. The other people
Mm.
are just looking at this, taking all these notes, and then maybe even after this call, they don't do anything. So the guy that takes massive action is way better than the guy that takes all these notes and takes no action because he's learning through failure versus you're learning through analysis paralysis. And that's where the difference is between the action takers that have extreme success and the ones that just look on the sidelines and they're like, must be cool to come in and they never take any action. So that's why I'm willing to just give it out because I know the ones that take it, they'll do well, and the ones that don't, they're probably just going to be in the same position as they are. So that's my
Yeah.
2 cents there too.
So then I got a question for the 1% that will take action. Like let's say because right now you just laid it out really well, like the process from end to finish. But let's say a landlord tries to like derail like kind of like your sales process right there. And instead of
Mhm.
like right when you mentioned corporate housing, that maybe they just like straight up ask, are you talking about Airbnb? Like, are you gonna put this on Airbnb? And then what
Yeah.
do you do when somebody tries to derail the sales process like that?
Yeah. So that's going to happen, right? Things never go as planned in sales. And that's why it's so anxious and you have people have anxiety towards it because they will hit you with curveballs. Now, the biggest thing that you need to understand is you need to be trained and you need to be skilled and understand what are the most common objections that we are going to hear from a landlord. For example, you may have, is this Airbnb, right? All of these objections that I'm getting from landlords, I'm writing these down and I'm providing rebuttals to every single one of these, right? So then I know when you hit me with that, I already have something in my back pocket. I know exactly what I'm about to say to you, right? And if they ever hit me with something that I don't know, the best thing to handle an objection is always agree with them, right? Like, are you talking about Airbnb? Hey, man, that's a great question. Hey, man, I appreciate you asking me that, right? You got to acknowledge that. I hear there's some hesitancy towards Airbnb. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Sounds like you had a bad experience. I'd love to hear more about that to see like if this is even a good fit, right? Because at the end of the day, this is another big issue that I see is we feel like the landlord is doing us a favor when we're doing arbitrage. That is incorrect. We are the ones that's providing the reward to them, and you need to have that frame on that conversation. And we can go through the pros and cons of why we're better than somebody else, but I do think that a corporate housing client is better than a regular tenant, and you have the advantage. So at the end of the day, if he has concerns about Airbnb, let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation about it, right? The one that's the most educated about the topic, he will start to listen to you because at the end of the day, if he sees your confidence, if he sees your certainty towards that, he's going to feel confident in you. But if the other person's on the call and he's like stuttering and you're like flustered, he's going to lose confidence that you can actually get it done. But if you're like, dude, I'm your guy. Hey, I know Airbnb. I know people hate it, man. I had another landlord that told me the same thing. And now we're working together and we're actually have a beautiful relationship. So another good thing that you could use too is whenever they hit you with something that you don't know, one of my favorites is, hey man, that's awesome, man. Some of my best property owners that I work with ask me the same thing. And you can hit me with anything. You can hit me with like, bro, is this Airbnb? Are you subleasing? Hey, that's a great question. You know what's crazy, man? Some of my best property owners ask me the same thing. By me doing that, it creates familiarity between the people that I work with and you. And then now you feel like there's some type of synergy between me and you. And then I'll hit him with another question. So usually I'm peeling that onion back if he asks me a rebuttal question like that, and I try to get down to the pain of why he feels that way. Because if he's like, "Oh, is this Airbnb?" Hey man, good question. We work with a lot of different marketing platforms. Airbnb is one of them. Is there a concern there at all? Yeah, there is, man. Like I just don't like it. Okay, man, that's a good point. Why don't you like it? Well, I don't like it because of this, this, this. Oh, it sounds like you had a bad experience. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? yeah, man, I had another guy that did Airbnb with, and he trashed my house.
Hmm.
Boom. You just got the objection. The is this Airbnb is the smoke screen to what he really feels like deep inside. And your job as a professional is to find that out and then be able to uncover that and then be the solution to it. Boom. That's what I would say for somebody like that. And you gotta be ready, man. You're never going to be all the way ready. The best opportunities that I have gotten was when I was not ready. Random phone call. I'm at a networking meeting. Meet a guy with 40 apartments. You got to be trained. You got to be skilled. You got to rep this out every single day if you want to be a success in this Airbnb game. Because if you're not doing it, there's other hosts out there that are training on this, and that's why they're crushing it. While you're out there that's sitting at home doing a course, taking no action, expecting to get results. That's the
Mm.
difference. Action takers are going to win. The ones that just have analysis paralysis, you're going to be sitting on the sidelines.
Yep. And you mentioned you gave me like a great rebuttal right now about yeah, okay, if you have other, I forgot exactly how it went, but like you mentioned having other properties, right? But there are most people watching this probably that don't have properties, you know? So is there a different way you should approach pitching when you don't have properties? And if so, like what would you recommend?
I think you need to act as if is what it's called, right? You need to act like as if you've already been doing this, right? If you come into a landlord and you're like, "Hey man, hey landlord, not gonna lie, this is my first property. You're actually the guy that I'm trying this out on, right?" He's gonna be like, "Dude, I'm the guinea pig," like, and you don't need to lie to them, but you could be like, "Hey man, I have partners in the space that have 50 units, 100 units." I remember I used Sean's name. I said, "Hey, one of my mentors, one of my coaches has 100 properties." Right. And I'm actually the one that's taking over this market. So we're super excited to be a part of it. So I'm not necessarily lying, but you need to provide some type of credibility to you because your success rate of you saying, I'm the newbie, you're the guinea pig, I think 9 out of 10 are going to say no, probably 10 out of 10, because nobody wants to be the guinea pig. Nobody wants to be the first guy that wants to be if this is going to work or not, right? And put their house at risk. But if you're like, man, I'm new to this, I'm not gonna lie, Dallas is new for us. But I have my partner in the game. He's gonna be helping me out with this. Even if he's not really helping you, you could be like, he's on YouTube and he's my guy. Like you could tell him that, and I'm gonna be the one to crush this. You can trust me. What do you need from my side? Do you need an extra deposit? Like, how can I make you feel more comfortable? Right? Just by being high energy, excited, willing to help him, you can get that yes. So I think a lot of it is energy. Like I could be brand new, but if I'm energetic and positive and I'm wanting to help you and I want to build a long-term relationship, the energy will rub off on you. And you're gonna be like, man, this kid has something in him. Like he really wants this. He really wants to work hard. But then some
Mm.
people call and they have a very low demeanor, not
Mhm.
great tonality. And then that's why they're not getting those yeses. So I do think even if you're fresh out and you don't have the credibility, leverage what you've learned on YouTube, leverage the coaches that are out there, and just act as if you've already been successful. Act as if you already have 5 units, right? Not saying that you should lie. Hey man, I have 5 units, I can show you, and then you get caught in a lie. Just be like, look, man, I have some partners in the space. They are crushing it in the game. I'm the guy that's going to be taking over this market. We're brand new to the market. Your property is one of the first ones we're taking on. We're looking to scale more. Mr. Landlord, if this goes really well, we're more than willing to take number two, number three, number four. So now I'm foreshadowing what potentially could happen.
Yep.
So you could do a lot of those things, even if you're brand new and don't have the credibility, just by having good energy, understanding his pain points, and really just being persistent on what he wants there.
Yeah, I love that. And a little extra tip, if you're watching this, leverage Wasim, because he's in he's one of our coaches for one of our programs called Closers Mentorship. I think that one's a steal, honestly. Like you can join, it's like $30 a week, and you get access to speak to Wasim like every week, right? You're on there every week, right?
Yeah, I'm on there every week. I'm literally on there. I think so I'm part of two programs. So the craft and superhost, I'm doing the business credit, and then
Mm,
I'm also doing the
closing.
closing mentorship for negotiating landlords. So that's the good thing is like I am a product of Sean. I didn't even take his course, but the stuff that he's dropping in his community is so much value. And then you can learn from coaches like myself and other great people in there. And you have so many people in the community. Like I think that's one thing about Sean's community. There's so many other hosts. Like on top of learning from Sean, who is the OG of the game. I mean, he's been doing it for 10 years. Sweat equity, right? Like, and he's still crushing it. So
Hmm.
why would you go learn from anybody else when everybody that's out there probably learned from Sean? So I really think like Sean's like the Michael Jordan of like the Airbnb space because he just has all the experience. And that sweat equity of trial error from 2015 to 2025 of him seeing the ups and downs of the space, that's why he's so knowledgeable. And I think having him and then top of guys like myself and other guys in the program that are a product of Sean, you get the whole package with that. So I think that's where, Sean's program really differentiates from a lot of the programs that we see out there.
Yeah, and I'll drop the link in the bio if you're watching this on YouTube. That way you can go ahead and check it out. But awesome, man. Thank you for all that. Also, I
Yes,
was
sir.
curious. I was curious when I asked you about your highlights on your career. You mentioned you retired your wife, and I was just curious to hear more about that because I feel like that's kind of every guy's dream, just to be able to be like, "Honey, you ain't even got to work no more." You can just,
Yeah.
retire your
Oh
wife.
man,
So how was that like?
that was amazing, man. Like honestly, my wife at the time, I met her when she was 19. She was in college at the time. I had a big impact on her because she was supposed to be a medical major. She wanted to be a doctor, so she wanted
Mm,
to go 4 years in school, another 4 years in med school, and then go be a doctor. So I was like, man, that's a lot of debt. That's a lot of time. And then she saw me, and I told her, like, dude, I just got the degree that you're going to get. And I kid you not, at the end of the day, when you get the degree, it's not about what you know, it's all about who you know. As soon as I got the degree, I was like, now it's time to get a job. And I wasn't getting offers. I had to go reach out and I had to go find this person that knew that person that knew that person to even get in front of the right people. So I was like, man, it's all about who you know. And then on top
mhm,
of that, she saw the financial side of what I had. And I told her about money and passive income and not being there when you work and still being able to make income. I mean, Warren Buffett talks about it. It's like, in order to be financially free, you got to learn how to be able to make money while you asleep. And being a doctor doesn't give you that. At the end of the day, doctors make 500K, 600K a year, sometimes 800K, but they still have to show up to get paid at the end of the day. Even though it could be once a week or once a month, you still got to show up. If you have a
yeah.
nice Airbnb business and you have the right systems, you can work remotely. You have that location freedom. That's what I had. She saw that. When she saw the money I was making on Airbnb, she was working her banking job part time, still in school. And she was like, dude, you're literally making what I make in 2 weeks in like 2 days, and you're not even working. So her mindset started changing, and she saw all this money I was making. And I eventually got to a point where I was like 2, 3 months in, and I was like, look, babe, your salary that you were making, I can cover that just through the Airbnb side. And then she came in, started getting more involved. She went and got her unit. She started getting profitable, her first, second unit. And then she completely changed her major from being a doctor to finance. And then now she graduated, I think like a year or two ago. And she's now in the finance space. She works full time with me inside my company. She leads all of our interior design projects. And she has been amazing. So it was great because she was there for me when I was broke. I got to be there for her when she was down as well. And then now we're both crushing it together and we kind of just help each other grow. So yeah, man, I definitely think your spouse or your significant other can either be the best or worst decision of your life. So choose
Mm.
wisely. If you have a good one, hold on to it. And if she's on your side and she's in your business, my goodness, you guys can build an amazing power dynamic. And luckily, I'm blessed to have that with my wife. So yeah, that was one of my favorite accomplishments is be able to not only win for myself, but to be able to provide that for my wife. And then my next goal now is to be able to do that for my parents because of how hard they work. So yeah, man, I think it's just finding the right vehicle. And I think with Airbnb, it's definitely one of the best.
That's awesome, man. Congrats on all that.
Appreciate you, brother.
And yeah, I feel like you mentioned something really interesting about your wife that she's like, she's like, I didn't even think that was possible to be making money like that. Like, sometimes it takes someone, like literally someone because you'll see it on TV and you're like, but that person, maybe he's into Illuminati or I don't know, like, or he's got rich parents or like, or something else happened. But when you see somebody like, no, doing that, sometimes that's what it takes to like break that limiting belief, right?
Oh
So,
man,
yeah, I was gonna say
I
like,
gotta.
what would you say to people that are like looking at this and they're like, I don't know, man, like. Is it even possible to do it like right now, 2025, the arbitrage
Oh,
thing?
yeah. Okay, I got a couple things on that. First, I'll tell you this. When you start a business or you start anything new, the first thing that you think is that the people closest to you are going to be your number one supporters. That is 100% incorrect. And I do think if you do have that, you're 100% blessed because that is not very, very common. What ends up happening is you have to go find out and figure it out yourself. It's going to be a lonely road. No one's going to be on your side. People that you think that would support you are not going to support you because you're figuring it out. And people are looking at you like, oh, he's crazy. He's dumb. What is he doing? My 9 to 5 is better, providing all their insecurities and throwing it on you. But if you just know how to take that stress and pressure and you continue and you keep going, you then get the success. And now all of a sudden, all the people that were not there are now asking you, how'd you do it? And that's where I'm at right now. I had the same people that were doubting me that were like, man, you can't do it. It's not possible. Airbnb sucks. Are now in my DMs asking me, hey, how do I get started in Airbnb? So I'm like, crazy how things come full circle.
Yeah.
Now, to your question about Airbnb this year, you 100% can crush it this year. Let me talk about the stats, right? I'm a big numbers guy. 2025, travel demand is the highest it's ever been out of any year. Travel demand. Okay. If you know about supply demand, if travel's going up, where do you think people are staying? And at the end of the day, hotels are great, but hotels can't cater 10, 20, 30 people. Airbnbs have these larger homes. It's infiltrated the market. Airbnb is also part of the S&P 500. So if you have a 401k IRA, you are actively investing in Airbnb stock, even if you don't even know about it. So Airbnb is here to stay. Another stat, 1 out of 3 people use Airbnb. In the world, there's over 8, 9 billion people. 1 out of 3 use them. So it is here to stay. Travel demand is the highest it's ever been. Any business is going to be tough. Amazon, ecom, Turo, Airbnb, solar, life insurance, sale. It's all competitive. It's all tough. It's all saturated. But the good hosts will survive. The good business owners will survive. Anything you do, if it's saturated, if a lot of people are in it, guess what? The bad people will get out of business. 90% of businesses don't make it out after 2 years. 90%. So sometimes the number one rule in business is stay in business and just stay consistent, stay persistent, constantly educate yourself, be a sponge to the people around you, surround yourself with the right people. If you do those right things, you can succeed in anything you do. Airbnb is one of those vehicles that you can make tremendous amount of money in a short period of time. It is literally the new age of real estate, in my opinion. And I think the people that understand the model and can go execute and be a part of the right communities like Sean's will have the highest chances of being successful. If you go do this by yourself, you're running with a blindfold on. You don't know where to go. You don't have the GPS. Sean has the GPS, the navigation. Take a right here, take a left here, go up here. You just got to follow it, bro, and then execute. So I do think it's a great opportunity to be successful this year. I think the demand is there. It's just, can you execute? And you needed the right support system to do that. So I do think get a mentor, get a coach. That's what I did. Even though I didn't have Sean directly next to me, I did have all of his information and his free course on his YouTube. And I also had people around me that were doing 20, 30, 40,000 a month in arbitrage. And I constantly surrounded myself with them, which allowed me to keep pushing myself. If you surround yourself with people that are not doing so well, you're going to be the average of the 5, right? You're going to feel like you're doing a great job. But if you can surround yourself with people that are doing 2, 3, 4 times better than you, you're going to constantly feel like you need to do more. And I think that's another way to expedite your success, which is why I got to 17 so fast. It was that when I was making 5, 10,000 a month, I felt good for a moment until I met another guy that did that in a week. And I'm
Mm.
like, man, I'm not as good as I thought. But a lot of times people, especially in small towns, I think this is a big issue, is that they're the best in their group and they feel like that's a accomplishment.
Yeah.
But instead, that's not a circle, that's a cage. You need to look around your circle and be like, he can provide me value. He can provide me value. He can provide me value. If you don't have that, look at your friend group. You probably need to change it. And I can tell you this, the friends that I had at 18, I'm now 28. I don't talk to any of them. And I'm okay with that because the new friends that I have now are doing way better. They provide so much value to me. The people that I had back then, they didn't provide the financial success or mental uplifting goals that I wanted to get to. So I do think surround yourself with the people you have. This year is one of the best places to get started in Airbnb. So if not now, then when is what I would ask you. Right? If you're not going to do it now, Well, I don't know what you're waiting on, bro. You're only getting older, right? And that time, right? Like I said, one of my favorite quotes is this: is like at the end of the day, you can either pay the cost of success or the bill of regret.
Mm,
Either way, the price has to be paid. You could either go hard right now and it'll be stressful, there'll be a lot of pressure, or you could choose not to. And then now you're going to be 40, 45 and looking back and be like, damn, I wish I had another shot in my 20s and took that business. So take risks while you're young, take a stab at it. Beautiful thing. Mark Cuban said this: you only have to be right one time, which is why, Alberto, I tried every business model I could try because I knew I only had to be right once. And thankfully, God willing, Airbnb was that space and it's completely changed my life. And now my goal is to help others do the same thing.
that's awesome, man. Well, that's an hour. I want to be respectful of your time, man. So thank you so much for taking this
Appreciate you.
time to do this. And this was awesome. And I guess you could shout out your social media if people want to keep up with you.
Yeah, man. I'm on IG. You can follow me, Wasim underscore Lambada. And then we have one of our companies, STR Locator, where we are bridging the gap between arbitrage investors and finding that first profitable deal. It's the hardest part about the business. We saw a big gap. Our company actually does that. So STR Locator, you can email me, Wasim at strlocator.com if you're ever interested in getting your first deal. And then I also have my other company, Lambada Consulting. We are a full in-house consulting firm. We provide financial consulting, business consulting, and a little bit of real estate consulting. They kind of go hand in hand. So if you need access to capital at 0% interest, if you need to get your credit on point, if you need a good business plan, a good legal team, you need a good CPA, bookkeeper, we have so many great connections to make sure your business can succeed. And I'm here as well in the Crack Superhost community. So if you join Sean's group, I will be here to help coach you. And yeah, we want to make sure that we can generate more millionaires and six-figure earners. So appreciate you having me on, Alberto. And yeah, great call. Hopefully, I added a lot of value to you guys.
No, that was great, man. It was a pleasure to getting to meet you, man. And yeah, take care. We'll talk again.
Beautiful. All right, brother. You enjoy your day, man. We'll talk soon, okay?
All right. Bye.